Well, like I said, I'm Marion Barnes with Clemson Extension Service and work in Colleton and Hampton counties. And I wear a lot of different hats. I've been a county extension agent for over 30 years. But what I'm not is I'm not a farm safety specialist. Right now, we don't have a full-time farm safety specialist at Clemson, but it's an area that I've been working in for a number of years. And when I talk about farm safety, it's not to bring up grief or injury to anybody that's had an issue, an accident, an incident, or lost a loved one on their farm. I know someone that's been injured by a farm safety incident. It's just to remind us that that what we do out on our farms, or if you farm full-time every day, is dangerous. And agriculture has been listed in the top 3 most dangerous hazardous industries in the United States for the last 30 years by the National Safety Council. So our farmers, if you own or operate equipment, it's something to be aware of. Agriculture has the highest fatality rate, one of the highest fatality rates of all industries involved in the United States. We have about 24 fatalities per 100,000 workers. And when we compare that to other industries, they are very, very low. And one of the most dangerous pieces of equipment that we have is our farm tractors. How many of you have tractors out there on your property? Drive them every day, every week, every month, okay? And we don't think about them as being a hazardous piece of equipment, but they are. Tractor rollovers or tractor turnovers is a leading cause of farm injuries. And this really gets my attention. 1 in 10 operators will overturn a tractor in their lifetime. 80% of these fatalities caused by tractor overturns involve experienced operators. People like me who have been operating a tractor since they were in their teens. But these incidents, and we won't call them accidents because, you know, if you think about an accident, you think that's unavoidable. You know, it can't be prevented. But in reality, 80% of the incidents that we have on farms can be prevented if we think about the hazards and if we look up and think about safety. So, you know, these are just a few facts that I like to point out when we start a farm safety talk. The 3 common tractor hazards are rollovers or overturns. Then you've got runovers, and then you've got PTO entanglements. And I'll talk a little bit about each one of those. The side rollover is the most common. And I'm about 100, 150, 200 miles from the low country. And we're up here in these hills and slopes with gullies and whatnot. And it's real easy to overturn a tractor to the side. Rare rollovers are not as common, but they're usually caused by improper hitching. Hitching an implement like a disc harrow or something too high, not down to the drawbar. And what it'll do is cause that tractor to raise up and flip. The average reaction time of a person to realize that they're in danger is about 3/4 of a second. Put your hand on a hot stove, it takes 3/4 of a second for that nerve ending to transfer you to your brain to say, hey, this is hot, I got to move my hand, okay? In a rare rollover, in 3/4 of a second, if this tractor was pulling an implement and the front end started to raise, in 3/4 of a second, that tractor would be up to the point of no return, where it would not go back down, it would flip. And in a second and a half, in most instances, this tractor will go from the front wheels on the ground all the way over backwards in a rare rollover situation. I'm real glad to see that they've got weights or balances on the front in case they hook a heavy disc harrow or something on the back. That'll help. Spreading these tires out as wide as the manufacturer operator's manual will tell you will give you more stability. One of the most important pieces of information you get with other than the bill of sale when you buy a tractor is this operator's manual. It tells you exactly how to operate this tractor, how to maintain it, and it'll tell you how to safely operate it. And we need to read these operator's manuals when we get them, and we need to refresh our memory every year. Most people don't do that, but that's what we really need to think about when we talk about tractors. when you start out every morning or when you get on your tractor, you need to do a pre-check, operative pre-check. Check your oils, check your hydraulic fluids, make sure this tractor is really maintained and it's got all the equipment so you don't have any breakdowns. The next thing I want to talk a little bit about, and I've got a lot of talking points on these tractors. I see one that when we were talking about rear rollovers and side rollovers, this tractor is equipped with a ROPS, R-O-P-S. Okay, that's a rollover protective structure. And I don't see the seat belt on there. That's one thing that's missing. If you're operating a tractor with a rollover protection structure, you need to have a seat belt on there. This seat is probably not the original. It was replaced and they didn't put the seat belt back on there. That seat belt will keep you in the tractor. With a ROPS, a rollover protective structure, when it's designed and if it happens to roll over, you're in the seat in safety. Now, if you're operating a tractor without a ROPS, without a rollover protection device, you don't want that seat belt on. Why? You don't want to be strapped to the seat without a protective device on it. But if you've got a ROPS, make sure you've got that seat belt, because it won't do you any good if you're thrown off and the tractor rolls over on you. So those are some things that you need to think about, especially on older tractors. We ask them, most everybody's got a bush hog. How many of you's got a rotary cutter or a bush hog that you operate behind your tractor? Okay. And the first thing I see is missing is this protective structure here. This is a PTO shaft. The power from the tractor goes to the machinery there. This PTO shaft turns at 540 RPMs, revolutions per minute. That's spinning 9 times 1 second. At 540, when you're operating this PTO shaft, it's going to turn completely over 9 times in a second. How long did I tell you your reaction time was? 3/4 of a second. How many times are you going to be wrapped around that PTO shaft before you could even think you're in trouble? Well, we call that travel time, okay? And Jim, if you'll help me here, in 1 second, with that PTO shaft operating at 540 RPMs, it will wrap up 7 feet of cord or twine. You cannot win a race with a machine. I don't care how fast you think you are. You cannot win. This one does not have, or it did have, the safety shield here, the PTO guard, okay? It's got the ladder part, but the most important part that covers the U-joint here is missing. And these things are quite expensive. A lot of people don't want to go back to the dealership, myself included, because you pay a lot to get the original parts. But if you've got a part missing, go back to the dealership and try to get the original part from the original manufacturer. If you can't do that, and they don't make them anymore, you can have a retrofit. This is just a plastic PTO shield or guard. There are several companies that make these, and you can get these and retrofit them yourself. The best thing to do is go back and get the original equipment. One thing I see that's missing on a lot of PTO guards is this chain here. This chain is meant to keep this PTO guard stationary so the shaft turns inside. And one of the major causes of accidents is entanglements that we talked a little bit about in these PTO shafts. So I've got a lot of good talking points here on this equipment. And I'm not throwing off on the owner or anybody, because I have equipment that's probably missing some safety features too. So that's something we need to think about. Another area that I see, how many of you operate your tractor on the highway? I know I've got a couple of pieces of property and I have to go a few miles. Everybody know what this is? What's this? Slow moving vehicle sign. It is not a driveway marker, okay? On the way home, I want you to look and see how many of these slow moving vehicle emblems you're seeing misused around this state. This emblem was designed many, many years ago by Ohio State University because we had so many accidents, rear-end accidents of farm equipment and so many fatalities across the nation. Their engineers designed this symbol here to let us know this is supposed to be on equipment, farm equipment, implements of husbandry that travel less than 25 miles per hour. If you look at these new tractors that are brought up, I promise you there's probably one on there. We don't see them a lot. They fade, they wear. These things are meant, when the driver sees this, that there's somebody in front of them on a piece of farm equipment driving less than 25 miles an hour, okay? If you come up behind a farm tractor and you're driving home this evening at 55 miles an hour, and there's a farm tractor in front of you going 15 miles an hour, and you get within 400 feet of it, how many seconds do you have to take evasive action or slow down? Remember, it's going to take 3/4 of a second for the average person to think that tractor's going a little slower. You have 6 seconds or less. If you're traveling in an automobile 55 miles an hour, a tractor's in front of you 400 feet, just a little over 100 yards, and he's traveling 15 or 20 miles an hour. That doesn't give much time, especially if that motorist is talking on the cell phone, okay? We're making an effort to get this slow-moving vehicle emblem and the information in it in our driver's handbook in South Carolina. If anybody's looked at a driver's handbook lately, there is no mention of this. So our young drivers that we're educating to drive on the road have no idea what this means. And I want to give Farm Bureau a lot of credit because they have been working with DOT, and DOT is working with Farm Bureau to get this information out. So on the way home, see how many driveway markers you're seeing. I think this puts our farmers at a risk because a lot of people are misusing these slow-moving vehicle emblem signs. The other thing, I have to use my little props here, but we're talking about quail management, quail hunting, and everybody shoots shotguns, okay? We ride a tractor here. This tractor doesn't have a cab. Anything over 85 decibels for an extended period of time, 8 hours or more, can damage your ears, okay? You can have hearing loss. When we shoot shotguns, especially 12 gauges, 20 gauges, whatever, the shorter the barrel, louder the report. One shotgun blast could be up to 140 decibels, okay? Thing about hearing loss, it's painless, it's permanent, but it's preventable. I suffer with hearing loss because I didn't have anybody telling me about these things. A 35-cent pair of earplugs can help you save your hearing. Some of these passive earmuffs that I keep and use on the farm as well as hunting, $25, can reduce these noise levels down 20, 25 decibels. That will bring it down enough to protect your hearing. This is an open station cab. You should wear hearing protection when you're running anything over 85 decibels. The tractors that have cabs, that's a good example of technology that we've used to eliminate a hazard. So think a little bit about that. A lot of talking points. I don't see, well, I do see some hydraulic lines, but how many of you pull tandem disc harrows with hydraulic lines? Use hydraulics on backhoes, brake lines, things like that. A lot of people don't think about it, but especially these new tractors, like that new John Deere up there, their pressure, their hydraulic pressure can go up to 3,000 pounds per square inch. These hoses that we have on our disc harrows and grain drills sometimes stay out in the weather a long time. Sun breaks those hoses down. If you get a pinhole in one of those hoses, and I'm not talking about a burst with a big splash of hydraulic fluid, I'm talking about a pinhole. That hydraulic fluid, number one, is hot. It has the ability to burn you. But the other thing, and the more dangerous thing, it has the ability to penetrate your skin. If hydraulic oil penetrates your skin, it can cause severe health problems. You have a matter of hours to have that hydraulic fluid surgically removed from your skin before you will have a situation that may cause gangrene. A lot of people don't know that. It's so important that John Deere, because I only have John Deere tractors, John Deere has put a 1-800 number in their operator's manual so that your doctor or emergency room doctor or whoever's attending, if you have hydraulic oil injected under the skin, you can call an expert that has medical knowledge so that they know what to do and get that hydraulic oil out from under your skin before it starts problems such as gangrene. Most people don't know that, but these hydraulic lines have a lot of pressure on them. If they get some age on them, especially with breakdown from the sun and things, you need to inspect them. If you're inspecting them, do not run your hands across hydraulic lines. Use a piece of cardboard, use a piece of paper, wear a piece of glove, so in case that pinhole is probably going to be almost invisible shooting that stream out. At least you can see it. don't ever put your hands on hydraulic lines that have pressure under them, because they can be 3,000 pounds per square inch, and it can cause some problems. Rotary mowers are good things that helps us keep our roads mowed and things, but if you're approaching someone operating a piece of machinery, first thing you need to do is be able to communicate with them, okay? These things are going to make a lot of noise, or if somebody's in that cab, they can't hear you. There's some universal hand signals that are used by the American Society of Agricultural Engineers. Know these hand signals so that you can communicate with that driver of that equipment from a distance, and he can shut the mower off. Because if this mower would hit something solid, that object can come out from under a mower at speeds of up to 200 miles per hour, okay? So don't ever approach someone operating a tractor unless they know you're there and it's safe to do so. And that's one of the reasons that they have a lot of safety shields and things on bush hogs. So you've just got to have a little mindset to think about. Nobody gets up in the morning and thinks, well, what am I going to do today that's going to be a hazard? Well, maybe I do, because I do a lot of farm safety talks across the state. But if you've had a lot of close calls, if you've had a lot of folks that you know is injured in your county, like I have over my 30 years with extension in agricultural situations, you'll think about it. But we just wanted to take a minute to get you thinking, to remind you when you get on these tractors, think about the hazards and think about being safe. If I save one person a trip to the emergency room, everything I do in farm safety has been worth it. So with that, I'll close. Like I say, I'm not a farm safety specialist. I'm just a county agent, and this is one of the areas that I work in. But we all operate machinery, and we need to be aware of the hazards, whether they're a lawnmower, whether they're a chainsaw, whether they're an ATV, or whether they're a big piece of farm equipment. You just need to read the operator's manual and operate these pieces of equipment safely. With that, Michael, I think I'll close. If anybody's got any questions, I'll be around. Thank you. Yes, sir.
I heard somebody had a front end loader, was pushing on a tree, and the tree popped up over the front end loader and came back, hit him in the chest, and killed him. So.
Right. Front end loaders are a very, very useful tool. And I've got one on a tractor that I bought recently. Never had a front end loader. And I'm glad you pointed that out, because a lot of these utility tractors have front end loaders on them, especially for the small acreages and things. I see a lot of abuse around with a front end loader being used to lift a person up in the air so they can trim trees and things like that. A front end loader is made to lift material, not people. The other thing that you pointed out about pushing a front end loader on a tractor is not a bulldozer, okay? It's not designed to push trees and things like that. So that's one of the other reasons that we get in a lot of trouble with farm equipment, is we use it for things that it's not designed to do. I appreciate you bringing that up and pointing it out. And the third hazard that I've learned from using my front end loader is when you go to check your oil and your radiator fluid and things like that, if that front end loader is raised, it's dependent on the hydraulic pressure to hold it. Make sure that it's lowered to the ground like your safety manual tells you before you get anywhere around a front end loader. And the last thing I'll point out is these front end loaders can get up in the air a lot. So if you're working around electric lines, be aware if you're raising those things up. And it affects the center of gravity of a tractor. The higher you raise it and the more weight you have on it. I didn't talk a lot about center of gravity, but that contributes to side rollovers. So that's a good point to bring out about front end loaders. And if you go back to the operator's manual, it'll tell you how to do it safely. Any other questions? Thank y'all.